I'd like to introduce our host and psychotherapist for their series, I Am Not Okay, Kim Christine. Kim is the founder and executive director of Bay Ridge Counseling Centers and Human Strong, which is part of the Bay Ridge Circle of Care. He is an author and creator of several mental health programs in the area of mood disorder and anger management. For several years, Kim hosted a call-in national talk show called Nightlight and has appeared on numerous national talk shows speaking to the issues of mental health and relationships. Over his 40-year career, Kim has intimately worked with thousands of individuals, couples, and families to help navigate the challenges of mental, emotional, and relational health. Please welcome Kim Christine.
Thank you, Amy. Our first guest is Christine DeBell. Christine was raised on a small, self-sufficient farm in upstate New York. As a young girl, she took ballet and studied voice. At 14, she began modeling for Macy's. Christine also auditioned for and won the part of Marta in the musical The Sound of Music at the Mack Hayden Theater. She spent 4 seasons with the Mack Hayden Theater. After graduation, Christine began modeling for Ford Models. While with Ford, Christine began appearing in feature films. She starred in several motion pictures, including Meatballs, Blood Brothers, and The Big Brawl, Jackie Chan's first American film. Christine also appeared in a number of television pilots throughout the early 1980s and enjoyed many guest star appearances in episodic television and movies of the week, including Night Court, 8 is Enough, BJ and the Bear, and the award-winning soap opera, The Young and the Restless. She left the film and television industry in the mid-1980s to raise her children. Since moving back to Los Angeles in 2008, she has enjoyed steady work as a film actress, appearing in Hunter, A Halloween Puppy, and A Talking Cat, as well as several other children's films. I am so happy to be able to spend the next hour with you to share some of our thoughts on this important issue in terms of respect, the dynamic that takes place between the genders. And I guess I want to begin with just throwing it out and asking, how do you think men and women deal and cope differently with regards to stress and anxiety, especially as they move in the world together? Any thoughts? Is there any differences in the two genders?
I would think not. I mean, obviously they deal with it differently, but everyone experiences it, right? And I think that the way someone deals with something is sort of, what a learned behavior, right? It's like everything goes back to me, like to the nuclear family. It's like it's like intergenerational sometimes, right? If you are, if you have a parent that doesn't deal well with stress, I mean, I feel like that can, affects you, and you may, yourself have those same feelings.
Right. Yeah. And at the risk of stereotyping, we probably all tend to do that. Just like our brain tends to think in patterns, we tend to speak in patterns to try to make sense of what some of the things are. And so, yeah, feel free to kind of explore some of that, and we'll try to understand that there's always exceptions, but there's some general trends. And I think generally, I would agree with you that men struggle with processing inner feelings, certainly in my experience, more than women. And that would be one aspect for sure. And what about in the wrestling with their own anxiety surrounding identity? I mean, in your working in I don't know, would you say that you started your careers in a man's world?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, not as much now, but in the beginning, for sure.
What was that like for you to be pushing into that industry?
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, it was just, oftentimes that stereotype of, oh, let's do this and you'll get the job. And I'm like, you know what? I'd rather not have the job if I have to do that. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Well,
But just to go back for a second to what Ashley said is that I have, throughout my lifetime, as you said, it's not stereotypical, met men that were upfront and emotional. And it's always like, whoa, it's so nice to meet that fellow,
Really? Yeah. And yeah, I think that's very true that we talk about being in touch with their feminine side if we want to talk about that, but it is kind of nice to be able to do that. So you were introduced to career development, lack of better terms, really early on with your modeling as a young teen. And looking back at that, what was that like for you?
I know that other, let's say, models that stayed in the business longer experienced, I think, what you're alluding to. But for me, it's like I wasn't modeling for very long before I started working in film only. And as a young teen, I was underage. So, so I don't know. Nothing felt inappropriate or incorrect in any way. And then, but it was really, I think, when I got into film that I began to experience those old cliches of, these, the Harvey Weinstein type stuff.
Yeah. And okay. And so when we talk about Harvey and that kind of misuse of power, was that something that you can look back and you say that was rarity, or it was happening more often than you thought?
It's funny because I have the ability when things make me nervous to, block them out or choose not to remember them. So I do remember one specific, but then I think somehow, it may have been frequent to a degree, not frequent, but it happened more than once. But I honestly, I can't say how I dealt with it because I think that I just got myself out of the situation as quickly as possible.
So can we talk about our culture? And so I want to talk about the sense of being able to have a sense of power and identity in our power of our identity. But as young teens, especially, we culturally begin to learn quickly that the pretty girl or the good-looking guy has power or the ability to be looked up to by some and others, and just because of looks. And so is in the workplace, do you ever experience that because of looks that certain people will have more power?
I think absolutely. Like I remember discussing this at one point that, well, you're attractive, you're not going to have trouble getting a job.
Really?
Like with one of my children, it'll be easier for you because it does happen. But for me, I never felt that power for some reason growing up, which we will talk about, I guess, if we were to go back and talk about the nuclear family and that, what the stuff that you bring
to
the stuff that's inside you from wherever it came from. But it's like I didn't have a lot of self-esteem. So I didn't think I was attractive. I didn't think I was you know what I mean? I grew up in a time when, women were very curvy and I was, this big, was like a stick with, nothing there. So, my hands are waving, sorry. So I'll try to keep them in my lap. So I can understand that what you're saying, that possibly some women felt that power, but I certainly never felt power.
And so that's interesting in and of itself. So I think that's sometimes a common characteristic that at least I've heard about. I don't know anything about the modeling industry, but I've heard often that there's these very beautiful people who don't feel they're very beautiful, or that they don't have that strength of sense of self and kind of a strong sense of self of damn, I'm good type thing. Is that, would you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I, was thinking about that I came to that late, right? I had to do a lot of work to give myself self-esteem, right? Like choosing to live a conscious life instead of an unconscious life. But absolutely. And today it's so interesting to meet a young person who's motivated and loves himself, not in that real sense, but is so happy with themselves. And, I'm just always shocked. I'm like, wow, I wish I could have been like that as a young person.
What was it like for you growing up?
Well, my father was a very angry person. So to me, anger was love. So I ended up, I was attracted to people that were angry. I feel, right? I ended up in relationships with people who were angry. And so for me, as I said, I had to do a lot of work around that.
Help me understand that for you, anger was love. Like,
well, that's how because I felt like, because I grew up in a family where let's say my dad was a rageaholic, right? An alcoholic and a rageaholic.
Okay.
That to me, that's how you should be treated, as a young child. I mean, anger was part of my life. So thereby I would, if someone would, whatever, you're attracted to people for whatever reason, but when they get angry, it's like, oh, wow, that's what I feel like, because I ended up, I can just say it because I ended up in a lot of relationships with people who acted like my father. So I'm making, right? Right. And so, okay. And so I felt like I did a lot of work around that, like, trying to figure out why and, saying, okay, well, then if I get in another relationship, if I see those signs coming up, then I'm going to say, nope, this is not good. This is not where you want to be.
Well, and so if you were attractive, I assume that, did you ever think that you used your attractiveness to gain what you wanted or needed in profession or in relationships?
No, I don't think so. Because like I said,
feel attractive. Because you didn't really feel.
I didn't think I was attractive.
Wow.
It's not something that I would use in any way. Like.
And so, but you must have felt the response of the men or others.
Yes. Yeah. But the thing is, usually it was mutual. I'd meet an attractive man. He thought I was attractive. I thought he was attractive. You begin a relationship, and then, not always, but in many cases, it was like I was married. I was, not marrying, but,
right.
In a relationship.
Yeah.
Because it's like, the base of family is it's familiar, something that's familiar. So that was familiar to me.
So, did you come from a close family?
Yeah, there were, I had 5 brothers and sisters. My parents were, yeah. Looking back, I think I had a great upbringing, but, still it's like something would happen and my dad would get upset and, and then my sister said, oh, and I think it's a coping mechanism. My sister once said to me, do you remember when Dad got upset because we were fooling around with he had like a track that he built that came off the wall and he'd built the whole thing with the track and the palm trees or whatever was there. And she said, remember when we were fooling around with Dad's track and he went berserk because we broke it or something? And I was like, nope, because I think my coping mechanism became, I would go to my happy place.
Okay. Yeah.
Nope, I have no memory of that.
That was a scary thing for you, I bet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, wow. So can I ask you then, in this trying to attract, and so from family systems approaches, we sometimes, or there's a theory that basically that we will be attracted and go to relationships that replace or replicate our family of origin so that we can finish the work that we never did. And so, when we think about your dad and anger and rage, etc., you had to be more conscious of yourself and have to face that. Could you talk about that work that you said I had to do a lot of work of being conscious and how that how you dealt with that?
Well, what I did was, I don't mind talking about it. I was I was also an alcoholic. So I actually have 40 years of sobriety, which I don't mind sharing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was that bad. But so I ended up in these rooms of, like adult children of alcoholics counseling sort of thing. And I spent a lot of time in those rooms in group therapy and, in singles, couples, working on myself because I didn't want to just keep repeating the same stuff that wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, my thing is, I was living an unconscious life and I wanted to help myself live a conscious life, being conscious of those things, like when you sit down, let's say we're talking about relationships and you meet someone and it's like, I joked, if I see a guy on television who's handsome or I'm very attracted to him, he's either a rageaholic or an alcoholic or both. I mean, so those are the types of things I wanted to work on. I wanted to, go on a date and sit down with someone and just be able to at some point say, that's it. I can see that this will not probably, this is not going to work out or this is not right for me.
Wow. So that you had to come to this difficult statement that the men that I am attracted to are the ones that are the least healthy for me.
Yep. Yes, that's what I think. Yep.
Wow.
What I
okay. And so that's kind of like
Well, just so you know, don't save that thought, but it was kind of a joke, me saying that. And honestly, so I should be able to say to you, well, since I've done all this work, I've gone on lots of dates and I've worked through this, but honestly, I haven't. You know what I mean? It's like, everyone's like, oh, who are you dating? Nobody. Are you in a relationship? Nope. So it's almost like I'm giving myself time to heal, a lot of time. And yes, but I haven't actually put it into practice. Well, okay, a little bit, but maybe like going on a date.
And how do you feel about that when you say that? You almost kind of said, well, it felt like you were saying that I really haven't finished the work.
Well, finish the work in that the way to finish it would be to be in a relationship. Right. And I've chosen to not be in one.
Okay.
So that's here, right there.
Very good. Say. Okay. Which is an interesting thought. So do you need a relationship?
Nope. I'm very happy with myself. Right. Finally.
Okay.
I mean, I don't need a relationship to make myself feel whole.
Right.
Not that I wouldn't like to be, I guess, in a relationship.
Well, and that's interesting too, because it's probably not a bad place to be where I don't need a relationship, but it would be nice to have one if it came along.
Right.
Because as the old adage says, that a joy shared is a joy doubled, a sorrow shared is a sorrow halved. And when you can do it with someone else, life seems to be a little easier and very good. So, but I like that. I like that in that you don't really need it. And so,
and to that point, I do have friends that just want to be in a relationship desperately. It's like they feel, for whatever reason, they need someone to feel whole. They prefer to be in and I'm not saying that I don't prefer, I just don't feel that I need that.
When you were growing up, were you working hard to get your father's approval?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I was.
So you were longing and desiring for something from Dad. And so can you articulate what that was?
Not really. I just know that my interests were his. I mean, he was interested in cars, and I know more about cars than most women, I would say. I like to be. I remember my mechanic once there, I went to see him and there was a woman there and she left and he said, "Oh, she drives me crazy. She just goes on and on. She thinks she knows what's wrong with her car." And I said, "Well, I do that." He goes, "Yeah, but you're always right."
So, yeah, you worked hard as a little girl to find out what he's interested in, et cetera, which is kind of normal for a father-daughter. Mm-hmm. And so today, do you still desire a man wanting to desire you, I guess?
No, I don't. And again, I feel like I healed myself from a lot of those wounds, right? And I forgave my dad. Because I know my grandfather was also a rageaholic. My grandfather made his kids, I think, wear signs to school. I don't think before I speak.
Whoa.
Yeah. I'm not positive that was
hearing that. Yeah.
Well, you know that he was very angry.
Well, and with the anger comes a lot of power, and so he exuded a lot of power. And so, have you traditionally had men that had power over you?
Yep.
And you gave that power because it was familiar.
Yes, that's what I think. I mean, you're the expert, but that's how I feel and what I've come to think.
And so, with that power with men, what is it that in the relationships that were not always healthy? What is it that you sense that they wanted from you, these men?
Well, I guess it's like thinking that. That's tough because you asked me if I thought I was pretty, but I'm thinking that for whatever reason, well, you know what? Thinking back, it's hard to say because now I would say, I don't know how I felt then, right? Because remember, it took me a long time to be in many places, in many things. As I said, I would just, go to my happy place. I'd have no memory.
And so you weren't even conscious of a lot of this. You were living an unconscious life. Yeah. Looking back now, more conscious, what do you think they were asking from you? They wanted from you. They were angry at you. They were using.
I don't think they were angry at me, right? They loved me, professed their love, wanted me, loved me. And so I guess on some level, I thought that, they loved me too. I mean, it was a relationship, but both of our skewed perspectives of what a relationship is. I mean, it's not like they were, angry, not all the time. Right.
And so, if you were in a relationship like that now, what would be different?
Well, I think I would hope that given all the work that I've done, that if I was presented with a familiar relationship, that I would not get involved with that person. I would just say, this was, great. Thanks for the dinners, but I've got to go or whatever. Right. This has been fun, but yeah.
And I think that's a huge step of growth for sure, Christine. I think the other question is that in every relationship we experience, I think, anger, and sometimes we aren't appropriate. Sometimes we are human, and we get very angry. And so, how, if you were in a relationship for a time, how would you be different now?
Well, I think it's what we were talking about is trying to talk about it, right? Like saying, hey, that, what you said how it made me feel. This is how it made me feel. And because, maybe the other person doesn't think about that, or just trying to talk about it, right? Have a conversation. Look, if we're going to go forward with this, then we need to do some work because, I really like so many things about you, but this isn't healthy.
Right. So you would want to confront the issues. You'd want to talk about it, and you'd be watching for what in that man? What would you be watching for?
I don't know. And that's honestly sort of what's scary in that, once a relationship starts, there's that honeymoon period where, wow, this is so awesome. We're just so great together. But I think what would have to happen is one of the triggers, one of those things that would trigger in me that emotional response that I would have to say, whoa, whoa, whoa,
right.
This is scary. So, and then trying to sit down and say, hey, can we talk about this? And if they're open and the relationship is sort of normal or working, then we should be able to talk about it.
Right. Okay. Good. And so by you saying, whoa, 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 I think that's an eternal woe. Yeah. But by you, and I guess you're using your words in a sense, and they are power. And so we're really saying, where do we get our internal power and our sense of self? And especially in a relationship, because like you say, the honeymoon period, we have these needs that do not go away. Right. The man and the woman, we could talk about sexual needs. We can talk about needs for companionship. We can talk about security. We can talk about all these needs are human. Yeah. And right. They are, well, we could talk about the economic law of supply and demand, and these demand never stops. We seem like the demand for intimacy, sexuality, pleasure, comfort, all those things that sex or a personal relationship can also bring, never seems to stop. And so unless we deal with this demand, and we do it in ways that are healthy, we might choose to be single if we can't do that. Do you think?
Right. Yeah, no, I actually know someone that has done that. They were in a relationship and they felt rageful, you know what I mean? So they've now chosen not to be in a relationship. But I think, though, I mean, obviously, I chose to work on that. I think that anyone who has those feelings should get help. Right? They should get help and try to work on those things that are preventing them from being in a relationship. I mean, yes, am I choosing now not to be in a relationship? Yes. But I can't say in the future what's going to happen.
Right.
Let's hope that I make the right choices.
Well, and I think we're all afraid of something, and so I think that's an important thing for us to acknowledge. And so I guess one of the things I'm wondering about, Christine, is do men and women, are they really conscious and aware of how much power they have over each other?
You know, I honestly, I can't say. There may be, I mean, obviously, I never felt powerful. maybe now I do, but I haven't been in a position where I can exert that power possibly. But I know that, or it feels to me like many of the men that I dated felt very powerful.
Yeah. And so I think unless we deal with this issue of power, and power isn't an evil, negative thing in my sense, it's this sense of strength of and dignity and sense of respect. And so it can be misused and abused. And so until we can understand that our power comes where it comes from, we're kind of vulnerable, and we're almost victims in a world. And so
I totally agree.
Yeah. So,
and haven't we both met people? I mean, I'm sure you have also, as I've met young people that seem so powerful, right? They have a great sense of self, and they like themselves, and they come from a and I'm like, wow, that must be amazing to have, grown up feeling like that.
But, that's true. But, until you actually become intimate with them in conversation, they might be like the amazing looking model who everyone says, wow, wouldn't that be amazing? Right. Or it's the comic who's up there and are appearing like they are as confident as anything, but inside they're feeling so insecure. And so even when we talk about these men, let's say in your relationship or in any male-female relationship, who actually might be perceived as very powerful men, your dad might be one of them, who actually internally are really feeling powerless. And their rage is actually perhaps indicating that they're feeling more impotent than powerful.
Yeah, well, it's like, but also like I said, right, it's passed down, right, intergenerational. My dad grew up with a grandfather, and honestly, I must tell you, my dad's passed, because I don't know if I would be happy sharing this if he were, well, maybe to some degree, but he'd get over it, and he'd laugh at it. But what I wanted to say, what you said was so interesting, is a lot of times it's growing up is making your insides and outside match, right? Like that's what you want to have happen, is you want your insides to match your outsides, and then you're kind of healthy. So we're all should be.
I love that. And that's kind of the definition of integrity. And as much as possible, we should try to live like that. But you can't live like that unless you are conscious, as you would say, of what you're feeling and what you're thinking, etc. Very, very, very true. And we are so often in our intimate relationships, it's a reflection often in our journey of what we experienced in our childhood.
Yep. Yes.
So when it's for us as a society, it's really, I think, maybe not, but more natural for us to feel for the victim. And so it's really easy to look how men traditionally have misused the positions of power over the centuries, and women have been powerless, and kind of look and go, bad men. But do you ever think of that in those terms? These bad men are really sad because they feel very powerless, that they have to pick on a woman.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think, is that's why you can forgive them, because they're just acting out from old stuff that they've been carrying around from their family that they haven't worked on.
so let's just continue to talk about this this challenge of relationships that we butt against since humankind has always, since all through history, is the sharing of what we call power. And we all can look at the misuse of power. We know the phrase that power corrupts absolutely. And it's the responsibility of two individuals to share that power. And it's equally the responsibility of the one that feels disempowered to find their power.
Right. Right. And that's what I was trying to say is you want to work to figure out where your power or what your power is. And it's so funny because what I was thinking about when you said power, I'm thinking of countries, states, power. It's just, it's just interesting to hear the word power when talking about us.
Relationships.
Yes, people in power.
And so I think I like what you said whenever we spoke, and maybe perhaps some listeners will be thinking of it. And when people are in very unhealthy relationships, they often aren't aware. It's only after they look back on it, what they were putting up with. And yes, we can blame the other partner, but the sad part also is their responsibility that sometimes they blame themselves or whatever. But in the end, it's not helpful as much as they learn to. And one of the things I think that we need to encourage, and I'd love to hear your point about it, is learning to have a voice.
And the other thing, hold on. I think, hold on. I don't have power right now. I don't want to lose power. I think when you were saying this, what's so interesting about it is that if you don't work on those things, you are doomed. What's the expression? You're doomed to repeat it, or there's an expression, right?
Right. Yeah. And I agree. And part of the challenge of our relationships, I think, is how we get stuck in roles to repeat it. And the brain loves things that are same. And because it takes a lot of hard work. And I think women, because they talk more about it, at least we think they do. Some research would say they actually don't, but I think it's what they talk about. They talk about their feelings more than men. Men talk, but it's usually not as much about that. They're usually talking about cars or something else, sports or those kind of things. And so it's more about the external than the internal. And so I think women have learned to bring adjustments to that and have a voice with that. And I think men struggle because they just want they want things to stay the same. And unfortunately, women, thankfully, are changing.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, I would have to agree. Right. And the thing is, though, is like change is good, but you should be seeking that change. But sometimes I think even women, it's difficult to see it. It's what were you saying? It goes back to what's familiar, right? They're just doing the same, even if they're talking about it, they can talk about it, but they don't really know how to solve it or how to, fix it.
And so what would be your advice if someone was saying, I don't know even where to start?
Well, honestly, and I was thinking about, quote unquote therapists or therapy. It used to be, people would be put in a nut house, and God forbid, no one wanted to use the word or talk about that type of thing. But I think seeking help is not a bad thing. I started in couples therapy and I think group therapy and I think that, it's good for you. If you're really hurting and you see a pattern you can't break, you need to learn how to break them.
Christine, I am so happy that you were able to share with us a bit of your thoughts and feelings and your journey along this. It is so critical that we are able to adapt to the stress and the anxiety that is being put on all of us from lots of different things, from technology, from the world, from economics, and all the inequity of power.
Sometimes we put it on ourselves too.
We experience it on ourselves and in our intimate relationships, in our families, and we can do better. We just need to be willing to say, as you have said, let's ask for help from people who have kind of worked on the science, as it were, of relationships and emotions and how they work well. And so we want to encourage it all.